So for those waiting for the new base iPad, I come bearing some not so great news because we have yet more reports pointing towards a release not happening anytime soon. Let's delve in. So it's been a whirlwind of rumors with the iPad 11 because you might remember, guys, back in October we were expecting this to release via press release, but then we got a pencil instead. That was it, and it was certainly surprising Apple had released no new iPads this year, and specifically no new base iPads, because this had always been a staple of Apple's annual refreshes. Without fail, we would see a new budget iPad, but for some reason that did not happen this year. I know iPad sales in recent quarters have been underwhelming to say the least, but considering many of us were disappointed by the iPad 10 and the major price increase it got, and the weird omission of specific features, we were hoping most of this would be fixed with the iPad 11, but unfortunately it seems we have yet another 10 months to go till we get a new base iPad. Like Minchiko had recently mentioned, a report from Taiwan also seems to suggest this iPad won't be releasing till the second half of next year, so most likely with the iPhone 16 at the September event. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. Now I'm still quite surprised by this because the base iPad is undoubtedly the most popular iPad, and so 2 years without a refresh is certainly odd. And so you may be wondering at this point, how does this random Taiwan source know this? Are they just making random predictions in the hopes of being right? Well, I wish that was the case, but no, these guys have been pretty spot on with their rumors in the past, because they do actually have legit sources in the supply chain, and they uncovered this specific tidbit about the iPad 11 because Apple's apparently working with BID, who assembles iPads, to move new product introduction resources to Vietnam. Now, if you're wondering what new product introduction resources mean, well, I also don't know, but thankfully for me, I can use the powers of Google and read this off a teleprompter. So yes, basically, MPI refers to Apple working with suppliers on the design and development of new products to ensure they can be made properly in a new manufacturing plant. Now, this will be the first time they do this outside of China, apparently, especially for a core product, and it makes sense considering the fact Apple's not going to be changing the design much with the iPad 11, it's just going to be recycling the iPad 10 for the most part, which in itself was basically an iPad Air 4, and that was basically an iPad Pro. So yeah, basically, this will be a very easy process with the iPad 11, and is a relatively risk-free product. I guess the only possible new thing about these iPads could be some fancy colors. Anyways, the really technical leaks continue because the engineering verification for test production is going to start in mid-February, so once test production goes alright, they can then mass produce these a few months prior to release, so I guess a September release does make sense after all, but I'm still hoping we see it earlier. I mean, Quay was the first one to tell us about this, and he's notorious for being a little iffy with his timelines, so whilst this is a mere prediction from some random guy on the interwebs, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see the iPad 11 in the spring instead. I know I just regurgitated a bunch of information that would go against this, but consider that number one, previous budget iPads have released in the spring, and also number two, we do have a new iPad Air refresh launching in the spring, and so dropping a budget iPad alongside that doesn't seem unrealistic, but knowing my track records, I'm probably gonna be completely wrong. Now let's actually talk about what to expect with the iPad 11, because if I'm being honest guys, there's not much Apple could change here. Why do I think that? Well, it doesn't take a genius to work out that apart from the iPad 10 that gave us a major redesign, every other version of the base iPads has just been simple spec updates. They were recycling the same old iPad Air chassis from 2013 for years and years and years. And now that we have a new design, it's not really new, but anyways, you can bet your bottom dollar the base iPad's gonna maintain this design for the next few years. And so possibly the only hardware upgrade the iPad 11 gets is a new chipset, and that's likely the A15. Now this won't be that big of an upgrade over the A14 in the iPad 10. You're probably going to be able to run COD Mobile 0.0001% faster, wow! But at the end of the day, we can all appreciate a new chipset because it should give this iPad longer support. Hopefully we also see 6 gigs of RAM, that would be nice. But honestly, the reason Apple's giving us this new chipset is not because they want to be generous, it's because it logistically makes sense. You see, currently the A15 is being used on a wide range of products like the iPhone 14, the 13, the SE, the Apple TV, the iPad mini, so I'm sure it's going to be cheaper and simpler for Apple's supply chain to allocate this widely produced chipset to the base iPads. However, I do want to mention that if these new leaks are right and we don't see this launch till September of 2024, there is a chance it gets the A16, since at that point it would have been 2 years without a new model, and so a jump from A14 to A16 would be more logical. Either way guys, that's about it for the changes. There could be a few snazzy colors, but considering the iMac colors didn't change recently with the M3 refresh, there is a good chance the colors stay exactly the same, though to be fair, that's not a bad thing. I do love the bright and saturated iPad 10 colors, so keep them as is, that's fine by me. So why am I looking forward to this refresh, you may ask? Well, I'm pretty sure the iPad 11 is going to have something special under its sleeves, and that's a price cut. Yes, Apple lowering the price of a new product is unheard of, but let me explain why I'm so sure of this. Number one, we know iPad sales right now are pretty bad. I mentioned this earlier in the video, but for several quarters, iPad sales have been crashing down, and so Apple HQ is in a shambles trying to work out how to turn things around. Now, there are many problems with the iPad range, but focusing on the base iPads, the main issue is the fact the iPad 10 did not really replace the iPad 9, which is still in the range and is getting very old. Yes, even today it's not a bad tablet, and if you do find it for super cheap because it often goes on sale nowadays, it's definitely a good buy, but let's be honest guys, it sticks out like a sore thumb in the range. Not only is it the only iPad still using the older home button design, but it also has a wretched lightning port, and so even if Apple wanted to keep this in the range for some reason, you can bet the EU's not going to let that happen under their watch. And I doubt Apple would give us a USB-C version of this iPad, and so the only choice Apple has is to discontinue this iPad. And well, if they got rid of the $329 iPads, they need something to replace it, right? I doubt they want the iPad range to start at $449, since that does price out a large majority of the market, especially in a period where sales aren't great in the first place. So I'm very confident the iPad 11 is going to get a price cut. I know the iPad 10 just got a new design, but I'm sure this has become cheaper to build across the last year, so they can, of course, comfortably lower the price in my opinion. The only thing I'm wondering now is how Apple's going to approach this. There's really 3 things they could do. Number one is to drop the price straight to $329 immediately, which would be awesome, but unrealistic in my opinion. The other possibility is that, like they've done in the past with the MacBook Air, they could of course drop the price slowly with each refresh. So for example, iPad 11 drops to $379 and then iPad 12 becomes $329. I think that's more likely in my opinion. The third possibility is, like others have mentioned in the comments, we only see a price drop to $399 at best, and that becomes the new entry-level price, and we never see the base iPad go cheaper than that again. That is also a possibility considering everything's getting more expensive nowadays, but I don't know guys. I have a feeling the iPad 11 might surprise us with how cheap it is, and could bring the base iPad back to its glory days. I guess we'll see what happens. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumors, and on that note, I'll see you guys in the next one.